Before starting any of your processes, you need to ensure that you've undertaken hand decontamination through hand washing, and that you're wearing all the required personal protective equipment that is appropriate for the task you're about to undertake. These will be listed in your standard operating procedures and will include items like lab coats, gloves, goggles, and masks as needed. Once you've finished with the hand wash and put on your PPE, you'll need to prepare your work areas. This includes taking out any of the consumables that will need to be brought to room temperature, as well as cleaning down your workspace. You'll also need to do things like prepare disc pots that contain 10% bleach. Your workspace must be cleaned at the start and end of every day, as well as in between changes of procedure when you'll be working with different specimen types. The same process will also need to be undertaken if there are any spillages. For fluid spillages, you'll need to follow local guidelines, as there may be additional steps that you're required to undertake. Preparing and cleaning down of your workbench includes not just cleaning down the bench space itself, but any of the equipment you're likely to use, including racks and pipettes. In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up a primary culture from your STGG specimen vial 5 that you pre-aliquoted in a previous video. We will then go on to discuss setting up rect or primary culture plates from the vial 1 carry bear aliquot that you also set up previously. Firstly, processing nasopharyngeal samples. Your nasopharyngeal vial 5 STGG aliquot may be stored at -80 degrees or in the fridge at 2 to 8 degrees. This will need to be brought to room temperature prior to plating. You also need to bring to room temperature your culture plates, rabbit/sheep serum, and Todd Hewitt broth. Vortex your vial 5 STGG vial for at least 15 seconds. Repeat this for all the specimens you're going to process. We're now going to prepare enough Todd Hewitt broths for the number of specimens you are going to plate. Aseptically, add 1 ml of rabbit or sheep serum to 5 ml of Todd Hewitt broth per specimen and control. Once you've prepared enough tubes for your samples, label all of these with THY for Todd Hewitt and the specimen number you are going to inoculate into it. You can do this using barcoded printed labels if you have them, or you can write the specimen IDs on manually. Once your THY tubes are labelled, open the matching specimen vial and aseptically transfer 200 microlitres of the vial 5 STGG aliquot into the THY tube. You then need to vortex the inoculated THY tube and place it in a rack to go into the incubator at 37 degrees for 4 to 6 hours. We're now going to move on to the process that will occur after the 4 to 6 hour incubation period. Make sure that you have all the plates that you require brought to room temperature at this point. As we are going to process a nasopharyngeal specimen, you will need sheep's blood agar as well as opticon discs. Ensure that the plate is in date. It should be labelled with an expiration date, and that it is labelled with the plate type, i.e. sheep's blood agar. You will then need to add either a barcoded label or manually label with the specimen details and the date of processing. The plate will also need to be labelled as a primary plate, i.e. 1 and the primary sign. Using a 10 microlitre sterile inoculation loop, take 2 full loops, 20 microlitres of the incubated THY broth and inoculate onto the plate to create a primary inoculum spot. Change loops between each 10 microlitre inoculation or flame if using a metal loop. Then go on and use the quadrant streak method to complete the inoculation process. Once you've inoculated your 20 microlitres, you will rotate the plate 90 degrees and then streak using a flamed loop or a new side of the disposable plastic loop. Streak 1, streak 2, streak 3, streak 4, your final streak to ensure single isolate dilution. Then discard the disposable loop into your 10% bleach discard container. Once this is done, then either using disposable forceps or flamed metal forceps, place an opticon disc between streak 1 and streak 2. Repeat for each primary plate. These can then be placed in a 37-degree incubator with 5 degrees CO2 for overnight 24-hour culture prior to reading. For rectal specimens, make sure that the plate you're going to use is at room temperature. For rectal specimens, this is the coliform chromosolate agar. Ensure that the plate is in date, that it is labelled with an expiration date, and that it is labelled with the plate type. You will then need to add either a barcoded label or manually label with the specimen details and the date of processing. The plate will also need to be labelled as a primary plate, i.e. 1 and a primary sign. Vortex the vial 1 specimen that corresponds to the plate you've just labelled for 15 seconds. This will need to be done for each specimen and its associated plate. Using a 10 microlitre inoculation loop, take 2 full loops from vial 1, your aliquot or carry-blair media, and inoculate to create a primary inoculum on the plate. Change loops between each 10 microlitre inoculation or flame the metal loop in between. Then go on to use the quadrant streak method to complete the inoculation process. Once you've inoculated your 20 microlitres, you will rotate the plate 90 degrees and then streak using a flamed loop or a new side of a disposable loop. Streak 1, streak 2, streak 3, and then streak 4, your final streak to ensure single isolate dilution. You'll then discard your disposable loop, if you're using one, into a 10% bleach container. This plate can now be incubated at 37 degrees in a standard incubator for 24 hours. Once you've done plating, record all the necessary information in the lab book, labelling the information and including the lab ID numbers for all specimens done, including using a second printed label if you've got one, the date the primary culture plate was streaked, the time it was placed into the incubator, and any relevant observations or incidents. You will then need to clean down your bench space appropriately.